What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today we are talking with Nervardia, and she has a channel where she covers a lot of atheist content and stuff like that. And today we're going to be figuring out what religion was like for her growing up, and then how she eventually came out of religion. Nervardia, do you want to say hi?
Hello everyone, how are you? I'm Nervardia, and I am an atheist slash science communicator slash snake enthusiast. I'm from Australia, if you can't tell from my non-existent accent. And yeah, so thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great having you on. And if everybody is interested, like I know you are, then please stay tuned. All right, so Nervardia, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good at the moment. I'm a little bit concerned. Recently, my country, especially down the East Coast, has had some pretty nasty bushfires happening. So far, from what I've read, at least 3 people have lost their lives, over 150 properties have been burnt, and like 850,000 equivalents to a football field has been completely burnt out in the wildfires in regards. So yeah, it's pretty nasty, amongst the worst that we've had in over 10 years. So yeah, I asked John to put up some links in the description to try and raise a little bit of money for the 2 rural fire services, one from New South Wales and one from Queensland, to just raise a bit of money and help us out, because it's pretty dire where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I know those fires, they can be pretty devastating. So any and all help would be appreciated. If you can, check out those links down there. And I hope that all gets resolved pretty soon, because like I said, I know that those can be pretty bad.
Yeah, no, it's pretty bad, and it's definitely due to climate change as well. Like it's an El Nino year this year, but it's very clearly related to climate change. It's been a very hot year this year. The bushfire season has started much earlier than it normally would, so it's pretty nasty.
Yeah, and I believe like a lot of people don't really understand that there's like an increased probability of these kind of extreme weather situations happening. So like a lot of people just think that climate change magically makes bad stuff happen, but it's like there's an increased probability that this kind of extreme weather is going to happen. And but yeah, the same thing happens here in the States with the super dry weather, caused by climate change and everything like that. So I have a few people that follow me that think that it's alarmist and everything like that to talk about it like it's a serious problem, but it really is.
It is a terrible thing. It's very frustrating, because scientists have been warning about the impact of carbon dioxide emissions since the late 1800s. So the first person, Eunice Foote, she released a paper on how carbon dioxide can absorb the radiation from the sun and trap it, in the same year as Darwin released The Origin of Species. So, yeah, scientists have been talking about this for almost 150 years or something like that. And of course, you've got scientists been screaming, "We need to stop this," in the 1960s. So it's very frustrating and very sad. And now 3 people have lost their lives, and 150 properties have been burnt down. It's an unmitigated disaster, and it's only going to get worse.
So if you guys can help anybody that's watching, definitely check out those links that are in the description. But Today I was wanting to talk to you about religion and your early life. Did you grow up religious? And if you did, what denomination were you? What did you do as a kid as far as religion goes?
Well, I grew up as a non-denominational Christian. So this is something that really didn't bother me too much when I was a kid, but as an adult, it absolutely drives me nuts that in public schools, Christianity was taught at public schools to kids. And I find that now completely to be abhorrent. So I grew up with a mum who was spiritual, a dad who was not very spiritual at all. He was a fairly devout atheist, if you wanted to call it that. And so I was getting a little bit of conflicting things between my two parents. And then I would go to school where we were learning about God and Jesus. And I do remember Mum used to take us to a church. I did ask Mum about it. It was a Baptist church. So yeah, I was indoctrinated very, very young as a kid. At primary school, if we didn't want to go to scripture, we actually had to bring in a note saying we don't want to go into scripture, and they would send us somewhere else. And so what I thought was really interesting that it was an opt-out rather than an opt-in situation, and the kids that opted out had to leave the classroom, so we were othered. They would have been othered. I never ended up asking my mum to be taken out of this course, out of the classroom for it, because I never got around to asking her. So yeah, that was really, really interesting. From being really, really, really young, we would always be getting this constant indoctrination through the public schooling system. When I was in primary school, I do remember being very embarrassed, incredibly embarrassed to go and do scripture. I remember thinking to myself that this is just dumb. But of course, me being a 6-year-old kid, I didn't really have any way to express how I was feeling. Also, it was really interesting when I was about 10 years old, we were in scripture and there was a girl who was constantly just talking up God and God this, God that, God, God, God. And she actually started speaking in tongues at school. And she was always one of those ones that would go on about how wonderful she was because she was Christian, how trustworthy she was because she was Christian. And she was one of the least trustworthy bitches I've ever met in my life. So that was really interesting. Also, my grandmother, even though she wasn't really around too much when I was a kid because she was 900 kilometers away from where I lived growing up. Because she was my mother's mother, she had a lot of influence generationally through my mum. And she used to be a Brethren. So I got a little bit of that Christianity being subconsciously given to me growing up. So yeah, that was basically me from the ages of about 6 till 11, 12. So when I turned 13, I was sent to a Catholic school, which I don't mind having religion being taught in a Catholic school because it's a Catholic school. And to be honest with you, we actually had some pretty interesting things in regards to having our religious education. Of course, we all had to go to church, to mass and pray and sing and be all wonderful like that. But I do remember they did teach us a little bit about cults and how to pick one when I was about 13 or 14 years of age, which was really, really interesting. But when I was about 16, I'll rewind a little bit. When I was about 14, my good friend from primary school moved to a Christian college. I don't know what denomination it was. It was just called, without doxing myself, blah, 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 Christian college. And she started taking me to a youth group. And once she started taking me to the youth group, of course I was, learning all about God and Jesus and all these parables. And one of the ones that really stuck out to me was when I was listening, they gave us a parable of a brother and sister were going out dingo baiting. So a dingo for non-Aussies is like a native Australian dog, and you're not allowed to do that because it's a native Australian dog. And they would attack the people's livestock because, nice juicy sheep versus a kangaroo. And so they would go out and bait these dogs using poisoned golden syrup, which is kind of like a molasses sort of thing. Anyway, so the story was that they were going back home, and the brother saw a bit of molasses on golden syrup on his hand, and he went to lick it, and his sister was like, no, don't do that, because you could die. And they used that as an example of how God, they use that as an example of how Satan could attack you at whatever time by just simply, if you drop your guard even a little bit, Satan will slip in through the cracks. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that's a little bit unfair because, of course we're going to have our everything, like every once in a while drop, like our guard drop every once in a while, because we're human. We're not able to keep a constant vigilance all the time. Anyway, I just remember thinking that was really unfair of God to expect us. Like, if God is all powerful and loving and caring, wouldn't he want to protect us from our failures and give us a little bit of leeway? And of course, that thought process was very quickly stopped because I was like, no, can't do that. That's like wrong thinking. God loves me. Oh, I'm sorry, God, for thinking that. And anyway, so fast forwarding to about 16, I was thinking about being confirmed into the Catholic Church. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to start reading the Bible and see what I'm going to get into. So I started reading, started getting depressed, and I was like,
sorry, that's nothing to laugh about. I know how depressing the Bible can be, but just like I started reading the Bible, and that's when the depression started.
Mm-hmm. And anyway, I was praying to God, going, God, please get me out of this funk. I'm really depressed. And then schoolwork caught up with me, and I stopped reading the Bible. And a few months later, I realized I hadn't read the Bible in a while. So I was like, I'm sorry, God. And so I'd pick up the Bible and start reading the Bible again. And then I'd start getting depressed. And then I was like, oh, God, please get me out of this funk. I love you. Can you get me out of this funk? Then schoolwork caught up with me. I stopped reading the Bible. Then a few months later, I was like, oh, I haven't read the Bible recently. So I started reading the Bible, started getting depressed. And then I kind of went, there's a connection here. So this, I don't know, I say it happened about 3 or 4 times before I made that connection. So what I did, I started reading the Bible from a psychoanalytical point of view. And I went, that's I'm in an abusive relationship with my own brain. So I decided to stop reading the Bible. And even though technically speaking, you could say that I didn't lose my my faith, I certainly lost my respect for the Christian God. And that was reinforced pretty much every single time I went to church after that. I only remembered this the other day, so I haven't actually said this in a interview for anyone before, so this is a scoop. So I remember when my grandmother wanted us to go to church with her, and my grandmother, as I mentioned, was very religious, and by this time we had moved up to where she lived. So we went to the church with her, and there was a group of kids, like it was kids' prayer time kind of thing, and they were like, "Come on, kids!" And the kids jump up and run towards the people, and all the kids were happy, and here I was going, this is disgusting. And anyway, they sat the kids down and read the story of the two little pigs, not the three little pigs, the two little pigs. And the story kind of went like, there were two pigs. One pig, stayed at home and looked after his parents, and they told him how to build a house, and he respected them how to build the house. So he built this house, while the other pig decided to leave and go and have fun and happiness, like go out and fun and go to parties and do whatever they want, drink beer, like take drugs, and anyway, he refused to listen to his parents' advice, and anyway, he built a badly built house, and then of course the wolf comes in and blows down the house of the one that ran away and did his own things, while the one that stayed at home, the wolf couldn't blow down their house. And they said, all right, well, let's have a look at what's in the heart of these two pigs. So they opened the heart of the pig that stayed with the parents, and it said love and happiness and joy and peace. And they're like, oh, you want to be like this person, like this pig. And then they said, let's look at the heart of the one that went away. And they opened it up, and it was hate and selfishness and promiscuousness and evil. And so basically I just watched these adults tell kids that enjoying your life is a fundamentally evil thing. And I just went, you fucking assholes. I was so disgusted when I watched that. I just wanted to walk out, because the idea that they were happy to tell kids that, and these kids were, 6 max, quite young kids. I was just
So my question is, why did it go from the pigs building houses immediately to like, all right, now let's cut them open and figure out what's inside their hearts?
Pretty much, yeah.
Like, it's like, whoa. Things escalated quickly here to the dissection of these pigs.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it was just basically thought crimes. Oh my God, you're going out and enjoying your life. How dare you? You need to stay at home and look after your parents.
Well, I feel like it could be. Are you familiar with there's a Cartoon Network show called Robot Chicken? I don't know if you've ever heard.
Yes, I have. Yes.
I feel like Robot Chicken could really do this whole thing justice. But it's like, and the one pig that decided to leave home attended parties, raves, and had sex all night. And he didn't learn how to build a house. He built a shack out of cardboard.
Yeah, pretty much. I've only seen the first season of Robot Chicken, but my favorite one is the woman going, "This is your brain on heroin," and she's smashing things.
Yeah.
I can't stop watching that one. It's so funny.
Okay, I didn't mean to throw you off from your story. So you were pretty disgusted by the fact that they were, telling kids not to enjoy their lives, and you were just like, you fuckers. So what kind of happened after that?
Not a lot, because you learn to bite your tongue around my grandmother.
Oh.
She's a lovely. Oh, she died a few years ago, but she was gorgeous. But it's sort of like you kind of got to pick your battles, and to argue with your sweet, kind, caring, loving, beautiful woman of a grandmother over religion is just not a battle I'm willing, like a lot of us are willing to pick. But she was quite a beautiful woman. I was just about to. But she did say the last time she saw my brother and my sister-in-law, so my brother and his partner, she said to them, "If you haven't read the Bible, you're illiterate."
You're illiterate?
Yeah, if you haven't read the Bible, you are illiterate. And they were like, okay. Both of them are university educated, but they're illiterate. She was a firebrand, but I loved her. I still do.
Well, so I'm wondering, how far did you make it into the Bible?
Well, I've read. I didn't read from cover to cover. I think I just opened random pages and started reading. But I did go into Genesis. I think I got probably close to Noah. I can't quite remember, but because it doesn't take long to become thoroughly depressed by the Bible, and not to mention thoroughly confused by the Bible. So I've read bits and pieces everywhere. So
okay. Well, I just remember you saying that, you would, pick up the Bible, read it for a little while, and then put it down, then pick it up, put it down. So I didn't know if you were just straight up reading it or if you were picking random spots in it. I guess, have you...
Yeah, I was definitely the random spots kind of person.
Okay.
Because it makes just as much sense.
Well, yeah, so we're Casey and I are actually doing a daily Bible podcast where we're going through it like cover to cover, but we have a Bible that has laid out everything like chronologically so that at least there's some kind of like story to make sense of. And so it makes it a little bit easier to understand when it's done that way. And like they have to take a lot of things like patching it together and piecing it together because it's so like scattershot, in the Bible, how it's written. But I'm kind of curious, was there anything that you read in the Bible that made you, I guess, question anything? Or was it just the whole the whole teaching of these Christian values that, you've got to, worship God all the time, or you have to deny yourself, life basically in order to do it? Like, was that the only thing, or was there something in the Bible that caused you to start like doubting it?
Well, I think the main one was the clear abusive relationship that God had. Because everyone, I believe, has at least a little bit of idea of justice, even if it's, buried deep down inside. Everyone has an idea of justice, and justice, of course, is what you make of it. And I didn't like the idea that God could demand so much of people and then get so pissy if somebody can't give the impossible. And I'm trying to go through the Bible the Naked Bible, which is basically somebody goes through it, sort of gets rid of all of the superfluous stuff and tries to give you only the stories. And even that is confusing as all hell. And just the amount of times that God commands something and then if that person doesn't deliver, God kills someone else to punish that person, which, doesn't make any sense. Or the number of times that God commands somebody to do something, they do it, and God gets pissy at them. Or the times that, somebody does something and then God gets cranky that he does it, and then forces that person to change his mind, and then he punishes that person for changing their mind. It's just like, this doesn't make any sense. You are an abusive asshole. So
yeah, and I mean, let's see, I believe it was Aaron, two of his sons that were priests, they used the wrong incense and God set them ablaze.
Mm.
Oh wait, they used the wrong flame to light the incense, not the wrong incense. So I mean, they just used the wrong kind of fire, I guess. God's a finicky asshole, basically in the Old Testament. He's very finicky like that. But like all of the moral superiority things that a lot of people attribute to the Christian like religion or the Bible, that's never what God punishes people for. Like in the Old Testament, like it's always about how somebody didn't like praise him right, or didn't submit themselves completely, or didn't follow his orders. Like it was never about what action they actually took. It was just about not praising God or not submitting themselves to God. So it definitely is a very abusive type of teaching that goes on in the Bible, especially the Old Testament.
Yeah, I think that was what really pushed me away from God, was the Old Testament. And a lot of people go, oh, but Jesus came to stop the Old Testament teaching, and it's like, yeah, you still kind of want to kill gays though.
yeah. They I mean, up until a certain point, yeah, that pretty much was it. Now, of course, you got the more progressive Christians that are like, we don't want to kill them. We just want them to, like, I don't know, not exist.
Yeah, that's completely different. And then you've got some Christians who are so progressive, they're like, oh, yeah, that's all cool. That's all cool. They're gay. That's fine. Yeah, so it's how it works.
Yeah. So, so the abusive relationship part of it is what made you start like questioning, but what eventually made you leave like faith or at least leave your God belief, behind? Like, what was the thing that pushed you over that edge?
Well, after I gave up my belief in God, I lived in a fairly hippie area of the planet. So I did go into a lot of spiritualism, a lot of like, don't hate me for this, everyone. You got to understand this was a very, very hippie new age area. I believed in crystals. I believed in astrology. I believed in organic things and that sort of situation, but I never was so invested into it that I could never drag myself out of it. So, but I did believe in those sorts of things. But when I sort of stopped going to school and I stopped sort of hanging around a lot of those new agey kind of people, I kind of defaulted to I don't really care, if that makes sense. It's like I don't careism. And then when I moved up to the city where I live now, I turned into even more of I don't really care. I was still a spiritual person, but it was just so far down my list of priorities in my life. It was just like whatever. So when I started university, so I'm doing a science degree and a major in chemistry and microbiology. So I started learning started learning all about chemistry. And when I did a first year human bio course, we were learning about how the brain works, and it was just so fascinating. And then it was just basically, she was just able to break it down into what happens within the brain, and it just kind of made me go, oh, there's definitely no afterlife after this, is there? No, because that's just right. And when like that day I was having a beer with my fellow student, and he's doing a neurology degree. Well, he was doing he was doing a psychology degree, but doing a lot with the brain, of course. He was like, no, I was like, this, all I am is just like, potentials and shit. And he's like, no, you're a little bit more than that, Meredith. But yeah, it was just I learned about how the brain works with the actin potentials and how all of that works, I was just like, okay, there is no such thing as an afterlife. So that was pretty much the nail in the coffin for me when I learned that. The other thing that also was a bit of a nail in the coffin for me was when learning about protein folding and how protein folding happens. So I know that's really kind of weird to think that was enough to cement that idea as well. But protein folding is just once you get one fold on the protein is more likely to fold to another fold, another fold, another fold. So you kind of have like this funnel that comes down all the way down into what this protein would look like because of the shapes that it makes and the hydrogen bonding. And yeah, it's just kind of a bit weird to go, all right, well, here's the brain that's all chemistry and here's the chemistry of proteins. Yeah, I just can't connect that with spirituality. I can't connect that with a God because we've explained using a natural and chemical and mathematical and physical way to explain how all this works. I just couldn't connect the two. Yeah, outside, and I say this all the time, outside of a black swan event, I don't think a God or a creator actually exists. So for those of you who don't know what a black swan event, it is a single event that happens that overturns our knowledge. So it comes from the idea that before Australia was discovered, all swans were white. Every single swan was white. There was no such thing as a non-white swan. When they came to Australia, they went to Western Australia and they found a swan that was black. So that overturned the common knowledge of everyone where all swans were white to all swans might be white. Like so that's what a black swan event is for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, no, thank you for explaining that. Because I bet a lot of people don't understand what that reference is. But I would happen to agree that unless we have better information about it and something that just overturns our knowledge in general, I don't really think that a God does exist. So I'm right there with you. But I'm kind of curious, like, what happened after you had this sort of thought, like as soon as you figured out that you were atheistic in mindset, like did you tell people, or were you still of like, oh, I still don't care?
Pretty much I still don't care. Thankfully where I live, in all areas of where I've lived, we've all been pretty accepting of atheists, which is probably a dream come true for a lot of people out there. So it's sort of like, we don't scream our religion to the rooftops. I mean, people walk around with crosses on, but, people walk around with pentagrams on. Nobody genuinely cares. So yeah, I kind of defaulted back to I don't careism. So, but my activism as an atheist YouTuber actually started after the Christchurch attack in New Zealand, where I was like, no, we need to get some Australian voices out there that aren't insane, which is a scary thing that's happening right now in our country.
Yeah. And that entire incident was just so horrible, and I hate that it happened. But so you've, I guess you've been a creator since what, about June this year?
Okay, well, that one's a bit of a technical one. I've been a creator since April last year, technically. I started my YouTube career as just uploading a video onto my university account. I did a group assignment on how the Fischer-Indol synthesis works, which is an indole is basically a molecule that we use for a whole heap of things, like blue dyes, like anything that's indigo is usually an indole. It's a molecule. And I won't go into the chemistry because that'll just take forever and no one really wants to hear my story of this story. I would love to put it up, but I actually dox myself and 2 other people. It actually shows you where I go to university. And initially that was fine, but as my channel has grown, I realised that I needed to put that on private, that video on private, which is a bit sucky, to be honest with you, because it was actually a pretty good video. We won overall best project as well, so we were pretty happy with that. So technically speaking, I started my YouTube career in April last year, but I started at I keep forgetting, it was just after the Christchurch attack, and I always forget if it's the end of March or the end of May. I think it was the end of May when I started.
Oh, okay.
My Godless account.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Awesome. So I'm guessing that I'm guessing you didn't really have to tell any of your friends or anything like that, because you're just kind of in an I don't care kind of situation.
Yeah. The default in my area of the world is that people are either agnostic or atheist. So it's sort of like you just assume that somebody isn't a religious person until they tell you, which is pretty good. But unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but yeah, that's just kind of how it works. No, the thing is that we don't really care as a country. We don't really care what people think in religious wise until somebody tells us what their religion is. And I think because of that, I've made this connection with people. With the more that someone tells me how religious they are, the less I trust them, because I've noticed that the more somebody says that I'm an amazing Christian and you can trust me, the more likely you are to be backstabbed by them. So yeah, the quiet Christians are actually, great. I don't care at all, but yeah. There are a lot of Islamic people as well around here. There's lots of other religions out there as well, but the default is to just assume someone is at least agnostic.
You see, that's completely 180 degrees from how it is here, because I live in the Bible Belt of the U.S., so it's like always automatically assumed that somebody is a Christian and they go to church, and so like I can't remember the last time I was asked this, but it's like, oh, what church do you go to? It's like, yeah, see, here's the thing.
Don't hate me.
But I guess since you're in kind of a more atheist or agnostic friendly area, like you don't really have any instances of like, any uncomfortable situations at work or with family members or anything like that?
Not at work, but we still get the street preachers around. So we still get people handing out Bibles. So we're not totally without it. It's actually really funny because I was learning Spanish and I knew someone called Jesus, which is Jesus for people who don't speak Spanish. Anyway, I was walking past. I couldn't find it where he was, and I walked past this guy who was giving out pamphlets saying Jesus loves you, and then he was like, "No, you're in the wrong area." So I had to turn around and walk. I had to walk past the guy who was handing out pamphlets saying Jesus loves you. I was like, "Oh, can I have one of those?" And he's like, "Oh, do you believe in Jesus?" And I'm like, "Nah," and just keep walking. So we do get those people. there's people who hand out the New Testament at university, and my campus is the science campus of my university, which makes no sense to me. And then you walk around, and when the days they give it out, you walk around and they get thrown in the bin. People accept them and throw them in the bin. It's just like, what are you doing? And there's also around where I live lots of stickers on the backs of signs, like road signs, saying Jesus loves you. And above that, and below that says someone's stuck, but his father can't stand you. So it's tolerated, but it's not liked by people here.
Right. You know what really sucks about those New Testaments, though, is that it's not the full New Testament. Like, it's selections from the New Testament that they want you to read, and it's kind of like, oh, so you're just half-assing the already half-assed portion of the book. Well, so I'm kind of curious. Is there any really big difference from you now as atheist that compared to you in the past?
No. In regards to morals, I would say that I'm a lot more sexually liberal. Like, I used to be. I mean, I've always gone, whatever you do, you do. It's not anything to do with me. I don't care if you want to go and fuck 500 people. I will think you are a slut. But now I'm like, if you want to go fuck 500 people, just be cautious. Make sure you wear a condom. Like, that's. But so I did have a lot of that purity kind of thing happening. Like, I was steadfast, I'm never going to have sex before I get married. Even when I wasn't a Christian, I was sort of like, I don't want to have sex before I was married. That didn't happen. And so yeah, there were like in regards to sex, I'm a lot more liberal and a lot more open to talking about sex. In regards to homosexuality, I didn't care at all. Like, it never like ever came up at all. In fact, it was when I first heard about homosexuality, it was such a traumatic experience. I can't remember what it was. I'm joking. It was such an untraumatic experience. Like, it's just like, okay. Like, it was very much but that was my first reaction when it came to gay people. And I've always had that reaction when someone says I'm gay. I'm like, okay, cool. Actually, I've got a pretty funny story with that one. I was in an awful living arrangement with somebody who had, I'm quite certain he and his girlfriend both had bipolar disorder. They were just not healthy people mentally. And I ended up needing to leave my house for like a week before I actually moved out, because it was just I just could not be in that house. So when it was pretty nasty. Anyway, I went and had an interview with this woman, and I was like, okay, I can see that you're living with another guy. Are you two a couple? And she's like, no. I was like, okay, are you two planning on becoming a couple? And she's like, no. I was like, are you sure? And she's like, no, I'm pretty sure. I'm like, it's okay if you guys want to be a couple. It's fine. I just don't want to live with another couple. And she's like, no, we're definitely not going to be a couple. It's like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, I'm gay. So you're never going to be a couple again. Like, you're never going to be a couple. And she's like, no. Okay, all right, I'll think about it. So yeah, that's a bit of a tangent, but in regards to homosexuality, I've never really cared. I've never, like, I didn't suddenly gain 500 IQ points or over my, nothing like that. I just was, my political leanings maybe slightly more left than they used to be, but I'm still the same person I was when I was a religious person.
Yeah, and I mean, I asked that specifically, to people that I interview, because a lot of times, Christians act like, oh, atheists are so vastly different from, Christians. And it never really occurs to them, like, we're the same. Like, maybe, some positions change or whatnot, but it's like, do atheists become worse people, when they become an atheist? And it's a weird thing, which I'm sure that you don't really get into that a lot in your own area, but I've noticed it here, like with me personally, because one time KC actually had somebody that thought that she worshiped the devil and like sacrificed small kittens in the basement, and it's like, we don't even have a basement, nor do we worship Satan.
But they're also wrong, because it's not kittens, it's children, it's babies. Get it right.
Yeah. Casey said that she should have told her that. I'm kind of curious, what kind of advice would you give like a new atheist or somebody that is like questioning their religion and feel like they're kind of coming out of their religion? Like, what to that person, what would be the best advice you could give them?
Don't be angry. That'd be my first one. Don't be angry, and don't hate yourself. A lot of people I've encountered, and I went through it too, I went from guilt, shame to being angry. I was very, very angry, and I have done and said some things to Christians that I really regret now. Don't hate the person. Don't be cranky at the person, and don't hate yourself. It's really sad when people are like, when I was a Christian, I would say this to people, and I just can't forgive myself. And it's like, you've grown. It's not your fault. It's not you anymore. You need to forgive yourself. People have forgiven you. If you were a violent homophobe, and now you're fighting to be like, to get homosexual rights, to be equal, and you're fighting. That's you now. You need to forgive yourself, because people have forgiven you. You need to forgive yourself. Understand that you've made a mistake. Try not to be angry. Don't take your anger and frustration out. Because I used to be very angry at religion. Very, very angry at the religion. Don't hate the person. Hate the institution. Hate the mindset, not the person whose mind has been corrupted by it. Yeah. That'd be my major advice.
I think that's very good advice. I know when I initially became an atheist, I found myself on the, in sort of the out group of my local area and even my family and everything like that. So it was very, I guess, easy for me to get caught up in like, oh, well, if I'm just offensive by what I believe, I should just go the full 9 and be completely offensive, kind of thing. And I can't remember anything that I'm like, I wish I hadn't have said back then, but I know now I have a very much more laid back demeanor, and it takes something especially like, I guess, violating maybe to really get me to kick into that kind of gear. But now I'm kind of curious, what kind of content do you normally do on your channel? Because I know that you said that you were an atheist and science communicator on your channel, so I'm kind of wondering what kind of content do you do?
So, well, it depends on what I feel, to be honest with you. So, as I mentioned earlier, my first foray into YouTube was my group assignment into the Fisher-Indel synthesis. And so I decided just to continue going on with my science stuff. So I like to talk about chemistry because chemistry is amazingly awesome. And I also like to talk about microbes, even though I haven't actually done a video on microbes on my Nervardia channel. And I also like to talk a little bit about evolution as well. So anything really that catches my interest that I want to talk about when it comes to science, I will do a bit of a deep dive into it, but it's mainly chemistry that I talk about. In regards to my atheism side, I try to also steer away from Australian politics, but without PM being a very, 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 very devout Christian, pretty hard to do that at the moment because a lot of the things that he says and does are religiously motivated. So to talk, it's good to be able to talk about religious, like the religious side of things when it comes to politics, and to get sort of an Australian voice out there that's not fundamentally Christian and bigoted and anti-gay and racist, which is kind of what Australia, I'm worried Australia is turning into. Like if you look in, like when I went to Colombia, one of the first things someone asked me was, "Are you racist?" And to have that and it's understandable actually. I totally understand that attitude and that question because there is a lot of racism in Australia, unfortunately, and it breaks my heart because there's a lot of us who aren't racist. So I just wanted to get that voice out there as well. And the best way to do that is to tackle stupid things Australians say in the name of God. And also, every once in a while, I do release videos on my snake Lucius.
Yeah.
Who is it?
Yeah. That's that was actually my next question, which I wanted to say first, though, was I'm so glad that you decided to stand up and use your voice in these ways, and I think that it's really awesome of you, and I hope that you continue to produce content. I know I've seen a few of your videos and I've liked every one of them. So anybody that's watching, if you're not subscribed to Nervardia, definitely go over there and check her out. But I was wanting to ask about your snake because I mean, like, your snake has his own, or is Lucius a he? I'm guessing.
We're 90% sure he's a
okay.
he. Yes. He went to the vet, and he was the vet did an ultrasound, and he found what he said looked like a testy. Unfortunately, the surefire way at his age to test if he is male is to probe him. But unfortunately, he was in shed, and to probe him could cause the shed to be damaged, which can cause issues if the shed doesn't come out of the vent. So he was like, "No, I'm not going to probe him." But we're about 90% sure he's a he. So that's good.
Okay. Like what made you want to get a snake? Is that something that you've always wanted to have, like, as a pet, or?
Yeah. So this is such a morbid story. I used to have budgies when I was living in the hippie area that I mentioned earlier. And Christmas night, one of my budgies started going, rah, 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 squawking. And I came outside, and here was a carpet snake eating my budgie. And anyway, we got the surviving budgies inside and watched the snake eat my pet budgie, which was pretty sad because I really liked that budgie. But at the same time, I'm like, this is fucking cool. And since then, I was just like, I want a snake, like, my entire life. And now I'm in a position where I can have a pet snake, and so now I've got a pet snake.
Yeah. I mean, it must be pretty cool to have a pet snake. I mean, yeah, you seem to have, like, a pretty good relationship with your snake.
I do, especially when he tries to eat me.
When he tries to eat you.
it's really cute because someone, like, I swear, like, hand over heart, somebody started a sock account called Meredith Snake Lucius, and it was not me. I have no idea who did it, but there's this it's really sweet and really cool and really cute sort of interactions that I have with my own snake on Twitter, and it's really cool. So yeah, I have my suspicions, but I don't really want to ask the couple of people I think may have started my that sock account, because, you know, I think it would ruin the magic a little bit.
So how long have you had your snake?
Well, I did do a questionnaire, a Q&A video, and I said beginning of February, but it was the beginning of January. I've had him, I think the 6th of January, I think it was when I bought him this year. So he's just over a year old now.
Okay. Awesome. And what kind of snake is Lucius?
He's a children's python. So he's named after a person called Children, not because it's a good name, snake for children, even though it is. They're very easy to look after.
I figured that it was just a snake that preferred to eat children. Yeah, well, that's also something else. Yeah, that he does like to eat baby mice. So he's on the baby mice. He's just so he does eat. He's a true atheist. He eats babies. Oh man. Well, it was very interesting to getting to know you. Is there anything that you want to, leave the audience with, or talk to the audience about? Let them know, where to find you and everything like that.
Well, you'll find me on YouTube. I'm assuming the link will be in the description. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm quite active on Twitter, unfortunately, sometimes. So that's basically the best places to get me. I'd like to shill the fires again, because my country is on fire, and it's not good. I know we're down under. We both simultaneously exist and not exist in hell, because we're below everything, and therefore we are in hell, apparently, which makes total sense. But yeah, my country is on fire. So if you guys could donate, if everyone, sorry, you guys, I'm trying to get rid of that out of my vocabulary. If everyone could please donate, just $5 or something like that. In US currency, it's not that much. You're at the moment, I think you're about 60 cents to our dollar. So yeah, so that'd be really good if you could just donate a little bit of money to help out the rural fire services in both Queensland and New South Wales. That'd be great.
Definitely. And I mean, any help that anybody can give is going to be much appreciated in this particular situation. So definitely go down there and check it out. Speaking of which, while you're down there, make sure you leave a comment. Let us know what you think about this interview. After you do that, make sure you smash that like button, subscribe to both Nervardia and Godless Engineer here, and I guess we'll be seeing you heathens later. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice.
And don't forget, don't give yourself the raw prawn.
Bye, heathens.